The United States government set a trap to destroy black identity movements. It was a psychological and structural ambush, and they used black women as the bait. Tragically, black men fell for it. They took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. But this wasn't just about policy or welfare. This was about the soul of the black household. To destroy the movement, the state didn't just need to infiltrate the meetings. They needed to infiltrate the marriage. They realized that if you could convince a black man that his partner's strength was not an asset, but a threat to his manhood, the entire foundation of black resistance would crumble from within. The black first push was not just about racial pride. For many, it became a desperate attempt to mimic the very system of white patriarchy they claimed to be escaping. They wanted the black community to mirror the hierarchy of the oppressor, with the black man sitting unchallenged at the head. In their search for power, they mistook dominance for liberation. For centuries, the black family was built on a foundation of necessary egalitarianism. Because the white power structure denied black men the role of sole provider, the black woman was never just a housewife. She was a co-laborer, a co-strategist, and a co-defender. However, as the movement for civil rights gained steam, a subtle, poisonous shift occurred. Black men began to look at the white man, not just as an enemy, but as a blueprint for manhood. They saw the white man's unchallenged authority over his household and his women, and they wanted it for themselves. The Black First Mandate became the mechanism for this shift. It demanded that black women silence their own concerns for the sake of racial unity. But unity was often a code word for submission. Black men began to see the leadership, the voice, and the independence of black women as a direct opposition to their goal of becoming the new patriarchs. They didn't want to dismantle the system of patriarchy. They simply wanted to be the ones at the top of it within their own community. To cement this new hierarchy, the movement reached for a familiar tool: the church. Biblical narratives were weaponized to provide a divine justification for the subjection of women. The framework of the man being the head and the woman being under him was used to beat back the rising tide of women's liberation. For the black man, the world outside was a place of constant emasculation and disrespect. The government knew this. They knew that the black man felt he had no authority in the streets, in the courts, or in the economy. So they fed the fire of his anxiety. They made him believe that the only place he could ever have power was in his home. By framing women's liberation as a white woman's trick, they convinced black men that if their women gained equality, the black man would lose the last shred of power he had left. They turned the black home from a sanctuary into a fiefdom. The black man began to rule over the black woman with the same heavy-handedness that the white man used to rule over him. This was the plan all along. The FBI's COINTELPRO and various government agencies weren't just looking for communists. They were looking for tangles of pathology. They used reports like the Moynihan study not just as data, but as a narrative weapon. They told black men that the movement was weakening because women were too dominant, and the men believed it. They began to blame black women for the fracturing of the movement. They accused them of being divisive, for wanting to talk about their own rights. They didn't realize they were following a script written by the very government they were fighting. The state's plan was to cause a gender war that would drain the energy of the revolution. While black men were busy trying to suppress black women to reclaim their throne, the state was laughing. They had successfully redirected the black man's rage away from the system and toward his most loyal ally. As the 1970s and 80s rolled in, the state reinforced this divide with new legal and social narratives. The Moynihan Report was used to suggest that black women were pushing men out of the house to qualify for welfare services. It painted the black woman as a mercenary who traded her man for a government check. Then came the no-fault divorce bills. The government and the media pointed to the exploding divorce rates and the fact that women were overwhelmingly the ones initiating them, as proof that women were tearing the home apart. But this was a calculated omission of truth. They stripped away the context. They ignored the shotgun marriages of the previous decades that had trapped women in unfulfilling or unstable unions. Most importantly, they ignored the reality of domestic abuse. By focusing on the statistic of the divorce, rather than the cause of the escape, they further fueled the black man's resentment. It allowed the narrative to remain. Women are the destroyers of the black family. Did the government's plan succeed? On the surface, the black movement marched on. The Civil Rights Act was passed. The Voting Rights Act was signed. But underneath the legislative victories, a deeper, more permanent wound had been inflicted. The state failed to stop the movement, but it succeeded in fracturing the bond of the black family. It took the once strong, interdependent partnership of black men and women and replaced it with a toxic imitation of white patriarchy. It left a legacy of strong black women who are forced to stand alone, and black men who are still chasing a version of power that requires the silence of their partners. The attachment of white feminism to black women's concerns allowed white women to climb the ladder of the workforce, while black families were left to navigate the wreckage of a gender war they never should have been fighting. The trap was set, the bait was taken, and the cost was the very unity that made the black movement unstoppable. We must now decide if we are brave enough to dismantle the patriarchy we adopted and return to the partnership that actually kept us alive. Thank you for watching. For more videos like this one, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to leave a comment with any suggestions of topics you would like to see covered on the channel.